Welcome to the Work the System podcast, where we help entrepreneurs make more and work less using systems. And I'm your host, Josh Fonger. Today, we've got a special guest, Cameron Herold. Cameron Herold is the founder of the COO Alliance and Second in Command podcast, and is known all around the world as the CEO Whisperer. He's a mastermind behind hundreds of companies' exponential growth, and Cameron has built a dynamic consultancy, and his clients have included a Big Four wireless carrier and a monarchy. He has earned the reputation as the business growth guru by guiding his clients to double their profit and double their revenue in just 3 years or less. He's also written a number of books, which include Double Double, Meetings Suck, The Miracle Morning for Entrepreneurs, Vivid Vision, and Free PR. Okay, well, Cameron, I'm really excited to have you here today. So tell us about yourself. Tell us how you got into this line of work of helping companies double their double.
Sure. Hey, Josh, thanks for having me. I guess, where do I start? So I was groomed as an entrepreneur. When I was growing up, both my grandfathers owned their own companies. My father owned his own business, and he groomed the three of us, his kids, to be entrepreneurs. And today, all three of us, my brother, sister, and myself, each own our own companies with lots of employees each, and have been doing so for 10, 15 years each. That's kind of the only world we ever knew. When I was 20 years old, I had 12 full-time employees on my payroll. I was running a business while I was in second year through fourth year university. So really kind of cut my teeth being an entrepreneur. And then I got involved in a group where I was actually coaching franchisees of a company called College Pro Painters. And for 4 years, I was coaching franchisees. By the time I was 28, I'd coached 120 entrepreneurs that were all running real businesses with real employees. And so I'd really cut my teeth in that coaching space and entrepreneurial space at quite a young age. Got involved in a couple of companies that I was able to help grow, built a big collision repair chain that we built up and took public, built another company that was in the private currency space that we sold. And then I got involved as the second in command for a group called 1-800-GOT-JUNK. And when I joined, there were 14 people at the head office. And when I left 6.5 years later, we had 3,100 employees system-wide. And I'd engineered that growth as a second in command. Left there 12 years ago now and started coaching CEOs and entrepreneurs and their teams globally. Was then asked to start codifying some of my lessons and why it seemed like everything I touched turned to gold. Why were all these companies I was coaching starting to do so well? Like, as an example, I coached the number 2 and number 12 companies to work for on Glassdoor today. So when you start looking at all these kind of companies that I'd touched and how they were starting to do, people wanted to understand that, and I just started codifying that in my books. And then 2 years ago, or 3 years ago now, started the COO Alliance. There seemed to be a lot of groups for CEOs and entrepreneurs, even so many podcasts that were geared at that group. And I wanted to hear the rest of the story. I wanted to help this second in commands, because my thought was, we're teaching the wrong person. We tend to teach the entrepreneur how to run the company. What we should do is teach the entrepreneur what needs to happen, and we should teach their COO how to actually put it in place and how to make it happen. So I started the COO Alliance and the Second in Command podcast, and that's what we do today.
Wow, that is an amazing story. So let's try to dive in today to figure out what are the nuggets of gold or the secrets to taking companies from just maybe 1, 2, 3 million to the 100 million.
Sure.
So let's use the 1-800-GOT-JUNK as the example. So you get into that company, it's doing $2 million a year or so. How do you begin to take that as big as you did? Like, what were the first steps?
Yeah, so there are 3 things that I identified very early coming into the company within the first few weeks that we decided to make our flywheels and really focus and obsess around. The first one was price. So when I came in, nobody was really making money. The head office wasn't making money. Franchisees weren't making money. Employees weren't making that much money. So I said, we have to charge 50% more than we're charging today. So we raised our prices across the board 50%. To become kind of the FedEx of junk removal or the Starbucks of junk removal. And we tried to price ourselves accordingly. There's lots of courier companies, but FedEx charges a premium, but they have a premium service. Lots of places you could get coffee back then, but Starbucks was the premium, but they could give you the premium service. So by charging more, our franchisees made more, we made more, our employees made more. We could then deliver more to the customer. We could have better branding, better packaging, better trucks, better service. A full kind of brand experience, but you can only do that to play in that premium price space. The second thing was we decided to really make our business slightly more than a business and slightly less than a religion. Is how do we get into that zone of a cult? And if we could really drive culture, and really obsess around culture, obsess around becoming a best company to work for, a globally admired brand, just become one of those iconic companies that in a city or country people would want to go work for, that was going to allow more people to come to work for us. It would drive buzz, it would drive brand recognition, it would drive employee engagement. And the happier our employees were, the happier our customers would be, which again would drive profitability and growth. And then the third was the flywheel around PR, was how can we get more free press coverage about our company with newspapers, magazines, TV, radio, bloggers, now podcasters, right? How do we get more coverage around what we do? Because that third-party credibility, that social proof is really what's going to propel our marketing and sales efforts. And nowadays, I mean, if we, when I left 1-800-GOT-JUNK, Facebook was just starting that month. If we had had Facebook or LinkedIn or Twitter as a place to amplify all this press we got, because we landed 5,200 individual stories about our company in 6 years. Wow. If we could have taken all those stories and shared them 3 times on Facebook and LinkedIn, we would have been way more than 100 million when I left. Anyway, those were the 3 core focuses, and those pretty much are the ones that I would obsess with companies on today. Is really understanding their basic P&L and margins, and then obsessing about employee growth and culture.
Well, let's dive in each one of those, because oftentimes when I'm working with somebody, I want to raise their prices. And so first off, how do you know how far you can raise it? Where is the limit, and how do they find that? And then are there certain things they have to do in their company to be able to justify their raising the price?
Yeah, so it's usually around the easiest place to start is kind of 15 to 20% more than everybody else. That's usually a point that you can justify. When you go past that, then it's like you really need killer marketing, you really need killer branding, you really need like the killer sales funnels to really justify being kind of egregious on price, to be the Ferrari or Lamborghini or I don't even know what's past those, right? Like the supercars at the $2 million for a car. You got to have some special something. But you can price, like the Tesla Model S is priced at the premium level about 20% more than all the other luxury sedans, right? So if you could get like a fully loaded 7 Series BMW for $100,000, you're going to pay $130,000 for a Tesla. So it's that kind of a pricing model. Even in my coaching world, my coaching works out to about $2,200 an hour. So I'm at a premium level, but there's people like, Marshall Goldsmith that coach for $200,000 a year. Yeah, I'm in that same range, right?
Yeah.
So that's all it is. It's kind of figuring out and then going about 30% past that.
Okay. And then in terms of, other than just...
You have to deliver too, right? You can't just like, Starbucks couldn't charge $6 for a coffee or $5 for coffee and have shitty coffee,
right,
and shitty food and a bad experience. Like it can't feel like a Dunkin' Donuts. And, you have to kind of give that full experience as well.
Okay. So it's not just the commodity, it's the experience plus the price, and then you can give your best work.
Yeah, you deliver on your promises, right?
So then what about this idea of the cult culture? So how important is that for a regular, a regular business? Or maybe I'm thinking about it the wrong way. Maybe every business should try to instill this cult culture.
I think every business should try to. So here's the best example I've ever seen. If you think about Microsoft and Google for a second, which of those 2 companies are a best company to work for, Microsoft or Google?
Google.
Google, right? No one ever says Microsoft. So what's strange though is both of them are on the left coast of the United States, right? Both of them are on the computer engineering space. Both have billions of dollars of cash. Both are technology companies. They both hire the same kinds of people. But Google decided culture was critical. Microsoft focused on their product. Microsoft is a product company. Google is a cult. So in every business, you can decide if you're going to be the shoe store, do you want to be the cult-like following shoe store in your city, or do you want to be the normal shoe store, right? I know a shoe store here in town, Forerunners, that people flock to go to Forerunners to buy their shoes. They drive from all over the city to go there because it has this one location, but it has this cult-like feeling to it, right? Versus the other places, they're just shoe stores. So you just have to decide, what do you want to be?
So it's much more about the brand and the experience and building that up, as opposed to just commodity product and getting the price low.
Yeah, and culture is not about the free massages and the free lunches and the that's not what culture comes from. Culture comes from alignment with vision, hiring true A players, like for real A players, getting rid of the C players. I've always said that A players are racehorses, B players are workhorses, C players should go to the glue factory. So you have to get rid of the C players, and then we have to give our time to the A players. So as an example, at this company, Forerunners, the shoe store, they only hire the best runners in the city to work at the store. So you walk in there and everybody looks like a runner, and they're all geeked out on running talk, and they got running clubs and private running clubs and running giveaways, and like, versus you go to like, I don't know, what's the Foot Locker, and you see these guys in there and you know that they're out smoking cigarettes on their break, and like they don't feel like athletes.
Huge difference. So how do you go about, oh yeah, I got two questions here. So first, how do you go about finding your A players? And then can you take B and C players and make them A players, or is that not?
No, you can't take or B and C players and make them A's. It's okay to have a bunch of workhorses though. It truly is. You need to have some A players and you need to have some workhorses. So the way you find your A players is first to clearly describe what they look like, what they act like, what they feel like, how they perform, to create job descriptions that are written in such a way that it really attracts them and it really polarizes some others. A players love reading job descriptions that scare the shit out of 90% of the population, right? It has to be, and get your job descriptions rewritten by a copywriter. You write it so it's at 80% done, get a copywriter to polish it, make it pop off the page so they read it and go, whoa, this sounds amazing. Start creating a brand for yourself and an image for yourself. Like wrap your company so that it looks and feels like an A player shop, right? Go to your company website and say, does it feel like Microsoft, or does it feel like Apple, or does it feel like Google? And really kind of creating that brand and that wrapping around your business is key. And then I think lastly is creating a set of interview protocols that really push away the C players and only allow you to be spending time actually interviewing the A's and B's.
So in the real world, let's say, and this is the real world, of course, you've done it before. Let's say you own an HVAC company, right? And you
Sure.
You need to hire another repair guy or gal, and typically you get 3 resumes for the job, and all 3 people come in are B's and C's. Like what do you do? What is the technique to really? Is it about casting a bigger net?
So I'm currently coaching a guy who makes springs for toasters and for like cars, like a really boring manufacturing company, right? We're redoing his office design and layout so it feels like an internet company instead of like a manufacturing company. He's getting rid of all the grumpy, negative union kind of mentality people, and one by one hiring the more fun people that in their spare time run Ironman, but they work, as machine shop operators. Instead of the machine shop operator that goes to the bar and smokes cigarettes, he's hiring machine shop guys who are Ironman people. So one by one, getting rid of the wrong ones, one by one, bringing the right ones in. He's giving everybody 5 weeks paid vacation, including their sick time, across the board, unheard of in manufacturing. He's giving everyone a clean work environment. He's cleaning up the shop floor, painting the shop floor so it feels more like a chip manufacturer than a machine shop, right? It's just the one by one starting to look at and model what the best companies to work for feel like, and taking your company and putting it there.
Mm-hmm. Now, to make that kind of transition, is it better to do it slow or fast? Because I've got to believe if you have been in business for 15 years and you have kind of a certain culture, do you have to just stop and then go totally new, or can you kind of phase out? Because it seems like there's going to be clashing between the A players and the C players as you're making a transition like this.
Yeah, it's really important that you actually make the transition not so much slow or fast, but methodically. So think about building a house for a second. Well, I'll give you a better example. How long do you think it took to build the Empire State Building?
I'm just guessing a year. I don't know.
It was actually about 410 days, which is extraordinary to think that they built the Empire State Building in a year.
Yeah, I knew it was fast. I knew it was really fast.
Okay, so that wasn't a lucky guess. You knew it was fast. Most people though would think it took like 10 years to build the Empire State Building, or 5 years. Now so you can build it fast, but the foundation was strong. The walls were strong. The engineering was strong. The plumbing and electrical got put in. Like they built it very methodically, right? They threw people at it and they built it quickly, but it's a very strong foundation, because if it wasn't, it wouldn't be there today. Mm-hmm. So building fast doesn't mean cheap, but building from the foundation up. So I see every business like a jigsaw puzzle, right? If I handed you a jigsaw puzzle, the most important thing for you to start with would be to look at the picture on the box, right? For me, I call that the vivid vision, right? What's the vivid vision of your company look like and feel like, so everyone knows what your company looks like in 3 years, so we can build it together. And then I go to the corners of the puzzle. And for me, the 4 corners of the jigsaw puzzle are your core values, your core purpose, your BHAG for your big, hairy, audacious goal, and then the plan to make the vision come true. Those are the 4 corners. And then I go to the 4 sides of the puzzle. The side pieces are all the people systems, strategic thinking systems, the meeting rhythms, and the financial systems. So most people try to kind of do the wrong stuff first. It's obsessing around vision, core values, core purpose, BHAG, and then building out from there.
That's very interesting. So of those 4 corners, you would say vivid vision is first then, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So tell us about that. How do you go about building this 3-year plan?
So the 3-year plan or the 3-year vision is different than the 3-year plan. So the vivid vision is almost as if you hopped into a time machine. You know, you rolled out to December 31st, 3 years from today, and you walked around your company and you wrote down what you saw. You described marketing, you described sales, you put down 3 or 4 bullet points describing operations and IT and finance and engineering, and 3 or 4 points about what your customers are saying, what the media is writing about you, what the meeting rhythms are like. You kind of describe your company as if it's come true without thinking about how you made it happen. And then you get that draft written as a 4 or 5 page written document describing your future. That's the vivid vision. The plan comes afterwards, right? The plan comes after BHAG, after core purpose, after core values. Then you get the plan in place to make the vision come true.
So vivid vision, and I'm assuming that's just the owner, and then maybe the key stakeholders, managers.
Just the owner. That's the owners. The CEO's job is to describe and articulate a clear vision of where we're going, and everyone else's job is to say, hell yeah, I'm in, or I don't want to do this.
And so the owner, if they're not a good writer, which a lot of owners have really a lot of trouble with that, do they get help doing that, or what's
the owner's job is to write the first draft, and then you get it to a copywriter who can polish it and make it pop off the page.
Okay. So why do most entrepreneurs not do this? Because I mean, it seems mechanically it seems simple. Is it fear that holds them back? Is it because they just don't think they could ever make a company that big? Because I see most companies, they stop at, they plateau at a certain size and they just never get bigger.
Most people refuse to dream the big dream, right? So it comes down to conceive, believe, and achieve. When you can actually see what you can see and you can articulate that to your customers, your suppliers, your designers, when everyone can see what it looks and feels like, then they start making decisions to help you build that. So when you describe, like, let's say you were building a company to, design a product that was going to be worn by people and festivals and at hotels, and they were like, you had this design ideas and what it was going to look like and feel like. The entrepreneur always knows what it looks like, but no one else does. And if you can all of a sudden get your seamstresses to see what you can see, and your banker to see what you can see, and your web designer to see what you can see, if everyone can see more of what it looks like, they start giving you ideas. They start getting excited about it. They start giving you prices that are way better than they would normally give because they see the vision and they want to be a part of that versus what you are today. So you get people to see what you can see, buy into it, and then they'll help you make it happen. Elon Musk, this is a weird example, but I've known Elon for 24 years now. Do you know why the Tesla Model S has the 7-seat option?
No idea.
So Elon has 5 kids, a set of triplets and a pair of twins. So he's got 5 boys. So if he's going to take his family for a drive, why would he build a car that he can't take his family for a drive in? Mm-hmm. That's the whole reason. And it had to be really fast because he used to have a McLaren F1. It had to be really sleek. It had to actually fit a 6'5" body because he's really tall. So I used to have a Tesla, I'm 6'4", lots of leg room, lots of headroom. And the person that sits behind me when I have my seat fully reclined, they've got leg room. He designed the Tesla Model S for him, for his family, for his needs, for him, his design ideas. And then he said, who's crazy enough to want to help me build this? Most people don't have the guts to dream big, and they don't have the guts to articulate what they dream. And then they go out and they hire C players and they try to manage them. And the C players don't even know where they're going. Most people, I don't know if you can see it, but there's a fly on the window right now. Huh? That fly has been trying to get out that window for the last 20 minutes, and it'll try all day, and at the end of the day, it'll be dead on the windowsill. And it's trying harder. But if there's a door right here, if it would just turn and go out the door, it would be free. Business people tend to work too hard instead of working smart.
Well, that's the truth. Yeah, that's definitely the truth. And most just work really hard until they're like the fly and they end up, going out of business. So this is interesting because I'm raising my 3 boys and I'd like them to be entrepreneurs as well. And it sounds like you were raised right because you didn't seem to have that fear of failure. And so what was it, kind of changing topics, but what did you learn as a child that made you not be afraid to hire employees and build a company?
Well, one was, as again, in the early stages of growing up, I had all these little entrepreneurial ventures. So I actually did a talk that's on the main TED.com site. So if you go to TED.com, if you look up raising kids as entrepreneurs, you'll see a TED talk that I did 10 years ago. So because I was groomed as an entrepreneur, I don't see running a business as a risk. I see having a job as a risk. Like I'll never get fired. I'm in full control of what I do. I can get paid whatever I want. I get to work on what I want. I get to delegate it. Like I have a fucking great gig, excuse my language. I have a great gig right now that nobody's telling me what to do, and I don't have to work on anything except what I want. So I don't see that as a risk. And then I get to decide what I want to build. So I'll build this, and then I'll find people who want to help me build it. So that I think is step one. I think the second part is when I was 20, my dad gave me the confidence to start my first business. And he said, there's no better time in your life to go bankrupt because you're only 20 years old. You don't have anything to lose anyway. I was like, I guess you're right. Like, what's the worst case scenario? I just get a job.
Yeah, no, when you put it that way, and if you have I think that's a big deal. If your parents support you and there's really no shame in failure, the shame is not trying. And so,
well, cool. It's easier than ever to start a business right now as well, because all of the systems and processes and tips on how to do it are all available for free or in the courses or books that we've got, right? Whereas 30 years ago, starting a company, you had to go to the library to find a book to figure out what to do. And you didn't even know who to ask to find out what books to do. Like only 12 years ago did we have Facebook where we could actually ask the world what the best books were for something and know right away. Or we had the Google 20 years ago, right? Prior to Google, prior to search engines, you had to go to a library, look up a book. There'd probably be 3. You'd read a shitty book. You'd come back. You'd be like, I don't even know. So you had to learn from failure. Nowadays, there's no reason to learn from failure. All the information is available.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So now it's not lack of information. It's the application of that information, almost too much information. So yeah, I've got like 50 more questions I want to ask you. And I know we got like 5 minutes left. So let's get to meetings, because I know that's a hot topic for a lot of my clients. So what are the kind of the highlights to having effective meetings, and maybe the differences between the online ones and the physical ones, if there is any differences?
Yeah, so there's no difference between a physical meeting and an online meeting. So I wrote a book called Meetings Suck. And the reason I wrote the book Meetings Suck was I was tired of people saying that meetings suck. And I realized that most companies have never trained their management team on how to run meetings. They've never trained all their employees on how to show up and attend and participate meetings, nor do they even know what meeting rhythms, what meetings to run. So I wrote a book that's to be written or read by every employee. Meetings Suck, you want every single employee to read. It takes about 3 hours. It should become kind of the textbook or the Bible for them on how to run meetings, how to participate in them. So that's the first part. The second part is I'll give you kind of the core basics. Every meeting has to have a clear purpose. First off, a meeting is anytime you have 2 or more people in video, in person, or on the phone discussing stuff. Okay, that's a meeting. 2 or more people over video, on the phone, or in person. Meeting has to have a clear purpose. What's the overarching reason we're having this? Up to 3 outcomes per meeting. Otherwise, book an additional meeting. So 3 main things you're going to cover. Every meeting has to have an agenda. So what are we covering, in what order, how many minutes on each agenda item? Every meeting has to start on time. And every meeting should finish 5 minutes early. So if you finish 5 minutes prior to the scheduled ending time, it gives you time to walk down the hall, talk to your assistant, get a cup of coffee, go to the bathroom, and show up exactly on time for whatever your next meeting or phone call is. There's some basics. There's a lot more in the book.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. So what are the what are effective rhythms? I mean, daily, weekly, monthly, or
we'll start with the end in mind and we'll work backwards. So the most effective meetings to start with are your annual planning meeting, where you relook at the vision, you come up with your annual goals for the company, and then you come up with the rough core projects to make the goals happen. And then you have your quarterly planning meeting. And your quarterly planning meeting is to, again, relook at the annual plan, recommit to the quarterly projects that everybody's going to be working on, and get some leadership development. And then you have your monthly financial review to have the leadership team review the financial statements together and make decisions on the financials as well. And then you have your weekly leadership team meeting, your weekly strategy meeting, and your weekly one-on-ones with each of your team where you're coaching them and developing them. And then lastly is your daily huddle. It's the all company 7-minute stand-up meeting. It's held around 11 a.m.
Now, do you have that in any type of company? It's always 11 a.m., always every day, or is it different depending on the industry?
I do them either at 11 o'clock in the morning or 2 o'clock in the afternoon. There's 2 points in the day that have been proven to be when the energy level drops. The first one is at 11 in the morning. The second one is at 2 in the afternoon. So if you have a 7-minute stand-up, 7-minute huddle that kind of drives everybody's energy up a little bit, it gives them a little bit of a boost as well.
That's very interesting. Yeah, I've always done that in sales organizations with the pump up time, but you're thinking total company. Cool. I'll have to try that.
So if you actually go on YouTube and you look up 1-800-GOT-JUNK daily huddle, you'll actually see a full 7-minute video of our daily huddle back from the old days.
Cool. Yeah, I'll definitely check that out. So what about PR? Because that's a big piece of growth. So you get your price right, you get your culture right, and then there's the PR piece. How can small businesses use that today, or what should they be doing?
Well, the first one with PR is to always be talking to the media about the future of what your company looks like. So you always communicate the vivid vision of where you're going or what it looks like in the future, not where you are today. So if they ask you about your company today, tell them about the future. You always communicate the future, and they'll write about the future, and that helps drive the future. Second thing is to remember that every media outlet only makes money from one thing, and that's from advertising. The only way they sell advertising is to have lots of listeners or viewers or readers. So they need an audience looking at their stuff. The only way they get that audience is to have good content. So they need good content, and they can't afford to go out and find it. So you're doing them a favor by coming to them with a story. So what I like to do is contact them and say, hey, do you have 2 minutes? I think I have a great story for you. They're probably going to say, sure, what's the story? Because they just want the quick cheat sheet. You give them the story, and they're probably going to write it.
Any particular mediums to go to?
Mediums?
Like, does it depend, like magazine, newspaper, online?
Depends on where your audience is. So where do your customers devour their content? If your customers are housewives, if your customers are business people, if your customers are technologies or accountants, like, it depends on who your customer is and then what content they read, they devour, and then go to those outlets to give them your story so that your customers see it. And then when you get, like, even when we were covered on Oprah didn't like blow the doors off our company, even though it was a 6-minute piece. But the fact that we could put it on our website, talk about being on Oprah, nowadays we could have shared it on Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter and emailed it out to everybody. It's about taking the story and coverage you get and amplifying it. That's where the real power comes from.
Well, Cameron, this has been really helpful to me. I got a whole page of notes, and I'm learning a lot in terms of what I can do with my coaching and consulting clients. And before I go, I wanted to at least let you kind of have the floor. Is there a certain question I should have asked you that you wish I would have asked you that you want to leave the audience with?
I guess one thing that I always talk about is that, and I was just coaching a CEO this morning who's running a $30 million company on this. I said, remember something, that none of this actually matters. That at the end of the day, we're all going to die. And we're all just kind of walking each other home. And if we can't have some fun along the way and laugh a little and not take ourselves so effing seriously, kind of what was the point? So I think it is just to not take ourselves so seriously and have a good time and enjoy the journey, right?
That's great. Oh, that's great, because a lot of entrepreneurs are extremely stressed out and they're not enjoying it at all. So that's great advice. So where can people find you if they want some help, either speaking, coaching books, where do they go?
Yeah, I would start with the books are all available on Amazon, Audible, and iTunes. So I have audio versions and Kindle versions and hard copy versions of all 5 of my books on Amazon. And then the COO Alliance, the minimum criteria for that is 8 million in revenue. But if you're an $8 million plus company and you have a second in command, that would be a great place to go, is the COO Alliance. And then also check out the podcast, the Second in Command podcast. Everyone's interviewing the CEO. I only interview the COO because I want the rest of the story. So we're talking more about the operational ideas on how to scale great companies.
Great. Well, very good. And I hope everyone enjoyed the podcast today with Cameron Herold. And make sure to stay tuned next week as I share with you another podcast from one of my past clients, so you can hear their steps to success, or a business expert like Cameron sharing a tool, technique, or their wisdom on how to be successful so you can make more and work less. And before we sign out today, make sure to leave us a comment on whatever platform you're watching or listening to this podcast, and send that comment over to info@workthesystem.com. Once a week, we'll be drawing a name out of there and sending you a copy, a hard copy, a signed copy of Sam Carpenter's book, Work the System. So make sure to do that and send it our way. Thanks, everybody.